Welcome to another video about the Liverpool Overhead Railway project that Bob and I are undertaking. A very substantial project indeed, because well, effectively we're going to cover the whole of the Liverpool docks, because that's where the Liverpool Overhead Railway ran. And in this video what I want to do is to show you some of the approaches that I have to producing a new model for part of the layout and part of the route layout in the old days of up in the loft. Right, okay, so this is what we're gonna this is what I'm going to be making here, and it's the whatever replaced the old Herculaneum station, the original Herculaneum Dock station at the south end of the line. And if I just pull back in this photograph, you can see here on this side that there was a junction. This is the new Herculaneum Dock station over on the right. There was a junction and the viaduct curved around very sharply and then across this bridge, which took it over the lines of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway, or the dock system rather, that was serving Herculaneum Dock, which is now all a car park, by the way. Sic transit gloria mundi, as they say. And the bridge went straight into the tunnel that led to Dingle station, which was the southern terminus of the Liverpool Overhead. So this is what I'm going to attempt to model. Now, apart from some excellent plans that Mike Edge let me use, there's virtually nothing, well, there is nothing, not virtually nothing, there is nothing really in the way of scale plans, apart from the ones in the Engineer magazine from the 1890s, which are helpful to a degree. But in fact we found there were some variations even on those. So this is really pretty much all we've got to use to run this spur, what had been the original terminal line of the southern end of the Liverpool Overhead Railway, to create this spur. Now I've recently done the junction part as a piece of fixed track because the viaduct is so complicated. And here you can see that I've only got this very grainy image, and I've got several reproductions of it, and I can't get a sharper image or any other images of the side, but it does give us, for example, a number of windows: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I guess. Is there one in the gloom there? And a couple at the end here. And these have something of the look of the windows in the Pier Head station, which I've modelled and which I'll show you later in this video in Gmax. And it gives you an idea, that will give me an idea of how to model those. But you can see there are two different sizes, these buildings. Now the other photograph, or there's a couple of photographs showing the, not there, that's actually Herculaneum Dock. There's the Herculaneum Bridge. This is one of these amazing cranes. All of these I've just got to make models of. I just love them. And I love this little crane here. It's the ships alongside. Anything to do with docks, that's me. I really enjoy doing those. So anyway, back to the task in hand, which is this pair of buildings, one smaller, one larger, one smaller, whatever. And this is another one of the type of photographs that are available of the old Herculaneum station. And you can see here, this is that smaller one, that's this one here. Okay, and it's only a few feet above the roof of a piece of one of the carriages, one of the power cars. So I'm going to use that height of that power car between the rail and there to give me the scale for up to here, because I've got nothing else to use really. And you can see it's actually built on top of the viaduct, on top of the girdering, and so we lose the handrails, but apart from that, it looks like a Dutch barn really, doesn't it? Although the sides are closed. And this is the line that so this is the original line that ran to this terminal station at Herculaneum Dock. This is Grafton Street, I think, up here. And here we have the line, the extension line that was built to run round in its sharp curve and then over that bridge and straight into that hillside there, and drops down into Dingle station. So that's all I've got to work from. So here's another one which I found online, scanned I presume, because you can see it's all pixelated and It's got a moire screen, that's that banding there on it. Doesn't really help us much more. Does show that there's a refuge there, but apart from that, a few odds and ends. I've tried to include as many of these sort of details as possible, but sometimes you're just defeated by the sheer amount that you would have to do to create it. This is looking back the other way from the new line, the curving round, to the new Herculaneum station, and you can see here the footbridge. It's another job, another modelling job that crossed over the Langston Yorks dock lines here, to then come down and connect with the docks or the dock lines, and also then to go on through to Herculaneum new station. Here is Herculaneum Dock, also Herculaneum Dock station. You can see here I've got them labelled up. This is again, we're coming from Dingle looking towards the north travelling line here and the south travelling line here. I'm not sure which was the up and down line. I presume that's the up line, the one on the west, and one of the signals, and you can see a semaphore there actually, which I haven't modelled, but it's got a crossover there as well for passing trains. There's perhaps a better image. We're actually just next to the, let's call it the down starter signal, and you can see the crossover there. And this is looking from that footbridge down across towards the dock, but of course by the look of it, this is after the Liverpool Overhead has been demolished, so there's nothing there. And here's a much earlier photograph showing the dock itself, part of the dock itself. And here we are looking down. This is a good view. So here we have this is the roadway here up high on the top of that cliff, and here we have the bridge taking the Liverpool Overhead into the entrance at Dingle for the Dingle Tunnel there. Quite a sharp angle, and then this is that viaduct that's eventually going to curve sharp and go around to the right. There is that bridge, and in fact that's what I've been using for making this one. I've used quite a bit for making the model. You can see I've actually done what I can see. Here it is being demolished, unfortunately, and again another image. And of course there was this tunnel, so this tunnel cuts across the top of this tunnel. You wouldn't want to live up here, would you? There's a better picture, but again, tantalisingly, the buildings I want to model are off the photograph. Here we are. And now that's back to Gladstone Dock. So let's go back to where I'm going to make the model, and the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess a lot of things in order to achieve that model. The first guess is that because it is an original station, I think the original length of the station, which is between 180 and 200 feet, that was what was retained, because this is the viaduct that would have been built originally in 1890s, early 1890s, 1893 it opened, and so that viaduct there represents the original terminal point, and it looks like these carriage sheds have now occupy the same length as the original station, which most of these stations are about, as I say, 180, 200 foot long. So that gives us a starting point. And so I'm going to make these, both of them, at 100 foot long. And you can see here, just on the edge here, this is the curve of the roof of the smaller, and that's the curve of the roof of the wider. So actually the viaduct has to be widened for the second, there it is, more clear perhaps, for the second building, for the end building here. So what am I going to do to approach this? Because I've only got a very limited look. Even when I looked at the videos, by the way, and there's a couple of them available online. There's one on YouTube, and there's one, I forget where it is now, but search it and you'll find there's I think there's a BFI or Northern BFI film available showing the Liverpool Overhead. So, to work. How do I get that first? I need to get some sort of scales here. I've got the width of the viaduct because I've made the viaduct. I need that cross height there, because once I've got that height there, then I can estimate it up to there and make at least it'll look something like the original. It's the best guess, and if anybody's got more accurate measurements or plans of these buildings, please do let me know, because I'd be very appreciative to have a size of them, just to give me some scales. Haven't found any yet. Okay, so just to remind ourselves, we need the height above from the rails to the top of the item of rolling stock. And so here we are in Gmax, which is where I make things, and here's one of my items of rolling stock, and you can see here it's power car number 40, and excuse me, and it has no doors because the doors open, so they're modeled separately, or they're exported separately. So this is the body of the vehicle. In fact, all the interior is modeled separately as well, because I found I had all sorts of problems getting the whole thing exported into trains as a single mesh. So one of the tips which this video is certainly giving you is to, when you've got something complex like this, is to break up the mesh into different components. So for this, it's just the outer part of the of power car number 40. And what I do is I use, I think it's down here, doors. Yeah, I use that as my attachment point for the door meshes, and indeed for the interior mesh and for the night mesh, and for everything. I just tell it to go to line up on doors, and that is my sort of go-to point. And you can see there you've got X, Y, Z equals 0, 0, 0. If you want to be pedantic, the fourth zero for this moment in time. Okay, so waffle aside, let's go back to here, number 40. So what I need to know is the height, and I can just look at my grid, and let's just remind ourselves what the grid setting is. The home grid is a foot, and I've got major lines every 10 feet. That's just the way I like to do it. So I've got 10, 11 feet, and if I wanted to double check the exact height, I could just look at that piece of mesh, have a look in the vertices, click on the, let's just go into that, click, make this full screen, click on the topmost vertex, goodness sake, and have a look at, click on measure, or the measuring tool, movement tool, and it gives me a height of 11 foot 1.282 inches, and I've got a pad in front of me. So the first thing I'm going to do is write that down. Okay, 11 foot 1.282 inches, and that's all I need from this. I don't need any other information. Everything else, all the other sizes are all done. Whatever mistakes or limitations or aberrations that I've done on the rolling stock, it fits what I've done with the viaduct. It all fits together. So if the whole thing is slightly not quite the right size by a few inches, well, tough. That's the best I can do, the best I can get from the information. But we're pretty much fitting. The only thing we have done, and by we I mean Bob, my mate, who's the route builder. I make the content. The only thing we've done is we've widened the viaduct very slightly, but I defy you to notice that. We don't want to save that image. I'm just opening up one I did just recently, a piece of fixed track, which is, here we are, which is a 5 foot section of this remarkable viaduct. So here's the side plates, and there's this bizarre semicircular, almost flattened semicircular track bed with this longitudinal bulk sleeper, which I think is quite great because that's a bit like Brunel's Great Western, 7 foot gauge Great Western. So hey, we keep going with the old bulk track. And there's the power rail with an insulator. It's only 5 foot long, but I needed this one because I needed to bring in the standard Liverpool Overhead Railway support. So that one's not been released yet, but it will be. At the moment, the only one that a 5 foot section that we've got, this is a piece of fixed track. So that's why the I've modelled the mesh of the track there, and the other track will just click to it. But it means that we can add the viaduct spline to this, or indeed other sections of fixed track, and you know, we can build it up from there. I found that I needed this because when I made a fixed track of the Herculaneum junction, see if I've got a handy, that's main and side. I had to split the junction up into 2 parts to get it to load into trains. So here's the junction. You'll see the sort of fun I had doing that. let's have a look down here. So here it is, and so if we're looking like that, and let's have a look at that picture again. It's this here. And one thing I did notice, thank goodness, is that for whatever reason they decided that this wacky track bed for this sort of triangular section, it just appears to be flat, and then it picks up again with the wacky track bed further along. So that's what I've done here. I've used the same texture, just very blandly there, and you can see here this is a length of fixed track. Let's put the texture correction on and the grid, so you get a more of a better view of it. And it meant curving, producing a curving section of the viaduct. I had produced actually some curved sections, but Bob brilliantly discovered, or just worked out, tremendous, that we could get away with just using the spline plus some shorter lengths of straight fixed track. Originally I was hoping to fix, this will take track on it, and of course you have to not wire up, that's the old type, you have to put the track on, so you need a section with a third rail, then without a third rail, and then third rail, and yes, and then the turnout comes in the non-third rail section, and then once you're clear of the second running line it becomes with 3 rails again. You can see it here, there you go, look, where you've got to lose the third rail on the points. You can't take a third rail across the points. The only thing also I've noticed that we've done, which it's just that little bit different, is, and this is my own work because I've produced the fixed track elements, and I fix them all with the third rail on the inside, which is normally what you have when you have a train coming into a platform. Let's see if we can see it. Yeah, let's see, you keep the third rail away from the punters as much as possible, but of course what you have to do, is on 3 rail British Southern Railway, Southern Electric, the third rail goes back to the outside when you leave a station, where there's no chance of passengers just sort of dropping down onto it. On the London Underground it's the same, where you had the 4th rail, you keep the rail in the middle, the return, and the live rail goes on into the middle at stations, and then over to or away from the platform if it's a single tunnel, a tunnel with just a single platform in, or on the other side, when you leave the station. I travelled on the Piccadilly line and the Metropolitan line for years commuting, so I know it well. Okay, so let's have a look back at that. So we know that this height here is up to here is 11 foot 1.28 inches, and that's what I'm going to use as my starting point. And as you can see here, it's got to join onto this junction piece, so it's going to start here, and I've allowed a fair length. I wanted a fair length so as to, on this fixed track, because the geometry which the track that trains creates can sometimes do wacky things. The worst culprits are the tunnel tracks, I've found. So I've actually changed the way in which I do tunnels. But this, with these attachment points in trains, will force the spline track to adopt the correct characteristics, or reasonably correct characteristics, for reproducing the junction there. Okay, all well and good. So what? Doesn't get us a heck of a lot further forward than we already were, except to some extent it does, because we're going to use a bit of this junction. I'm not going to use this particular fixed track piece. I'm going to go for a smaller piece, and then longer piece rather, and then just trim it down, build on it, because I want to make the this extension piece a fixed track element, probably with a spline piece between the two, just a short piece there, just to allow for flexibility. Yeah, I think that would be good. So it's going to come on. Let's have a look at that again, and let's go to there. That's our junction that I'm just showing you there in Gmax, and it's coming out to about there. Or if we go back to this one, It's pretty close up, isn't it? Well, it's going to be, I'm just going to have a short connecting piece there, maybe of spline. Might even just be the fixed track of the station will just click straight onto there. That might be an option, actually thinking about it. That would be quite a long way. But I've had to allow for quite a long arm of the junction there to allow for the track to be curved round correctly, the geometry of the track. All will become obvious eventually when I show you this in TANE. Trying to think if I've got it loaded. I think I may have. Let's go into TANE. This is the one I use. I mean, I use TANE rather than I've got Trains 2019 and 2012 and that there as well, but this is the one I tend to go for because it was the more than just an incremental move. And there's the police going by. You see we've got LOR2. No, I've obviously deleted the junction test, so let's just create a route. Let's have a look. Doesn't really. And here you get a 5-foot track. So it's fixed track. I'm trying to remember what I called it now. Herculaneum Junction. Map tiles. Those are ones Bob and I are just here it is. Are just using for positioning stuff. They're not part of it. They're not really released. Herculaneum Junction. There we are. So that's what I was showing you there in Gmax. This is the export. What in fact we've done though is, or what in fact I've done is, I must stop using the royal we, is to remove the spline point connection for the viaduct, because although I put 3 in, for some reason, which I'm sure should be obvious to me, I couldn't get the third one to work. And that's quite apart from this also being a bit of a test on the old size of model that you can export into trains. So actually this part, the junction part, is a separate mesh that is loaded into the model when it loads completely. It's in the mesh table in the config. Okay, so the way I got around this was I did another bit of fixed track. There we are. That's that fixed track with upright that I showed you. There it is in trains, and it has got both track attachment points and spline for the viaduct. So if I move this, come on, into position, and let's put another one in. Here we go, into position, and then I put a third one in, and I rotate that 30 degrees, which is the angle that I've done this bit of junction at. There we are. So now instead of just having track attachment points, I've now got spline attachment points. So if I go into the splines and scroll down through all of these, let's try the 45-foot one, then it should connect up. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. And I think that's about 5 meters in height. I can't remember now. It should do, but I can't. Let's have a look at it. It looks a bit low actually. No, maybe it is 5 meters. Yeah, oh, that's alright. So that of course would be, this is the site of Herculaneum New Station, which I'm not going to worry about now, but it means that we can connect up splines. The spline. So if I wanted to put a bit of spline in there, just take it up to 5 feet. But this one of course is really important, because although I've got 2 close together there, I mean I could eliminate the 5 foot with uprights and just put a plain 5-foot section in there. This is going to curve right round, very tight. I would need something to attach it to here to force it to curve right round. And also you get very strange with splines. In trains you always get this sort of slight recurve, and it's, I think, because it's trying to keep that geometry there. You can see it's a sort of squared off geometry. It needs to sort of rotate a bit. If we were to put a let's put a 5 foot in there. And I'll rotate it round to a bit more than, come on, let's take it round to there, and then I move the spline connected up. You'll see that forces it to take that, to avoid that recurve, and you can see it's a really sharp curve there in that part in particular. And if we were to rotate this a bit more, you're really talking, aren't you? That's really quite a sharp curve, but classic of overhead railways, like, you know, New York, Chicago, and back in its day, Liverpool. Alas, no more. A terrible tragedy. When I think of what they've done at Docklands, the old Silvertown tramway, which I griced on several occasions, and now it's flying in the sky. Why couldn't they do something decent in Liverpool as well? Oh well. So I don't live there, I can't really complain. So that's just me putting in some, oh, where are we? Not very well putting in. Faffing about here. Should connect up. Right, now you're not connecting up. Should do. Oh yeah, don't you connect up there? Huh, I wonder why it did that. Yeah, because it's crushed it there, that's not right, is it? Well, you can see I'm having fun with the old track here. Let's take that one out. Put another one in. There we are. I don't know what's playing games. I wonder if it's because of this piece of fix. Sorry, this is this is the sort of testing that Bob does, and I don't normally sort of have to worry about this. Just fix it. Well, isn't that strange? That was working fine. Trust me. Oops. No, we don't want another one. Where are we? That's very odd. I actually had this all wired up, all connected up. Very strange. Okay, well, I'm not going to go any further into that. I'm simply going to attempt to sort it out at a later stage. So I'm not going to worry about that now. Whatever happens, I've got to get that junction done. It may end up as two models by the looks of that. Happy days. Right, so that's going to be our junction, and our new building is going to be over there. So let's leave this. Don't save it, thank you very much, especially as there seems to be a problem. So that was that in there. Except it wasn't, because the one that actually got exported was Herculaneum Junction. Oh, main. There we are. That's it down there. So you can see I've got it's like I've got the attachment points, but I'm missing all of that section of the junction viaduct, because all of this made, I forget how many, this made almost 9,000 polygons, so it would have been too big. Altogether it's about 12,000. Okay, enough of this. So what I need to do now is to open up a section of viaduct track, and you can see I've got all the meshes here, which a long section, which I think I've got here, says here viaduct spline section. I thought I had a very long one here. Yeah, 270, that's going to be too I thought I had a 180 as well. Oh well, 270 will do. This isn't really suitable as it is, but it's going to be the starting point for my new piece of fixed track. And you can see here it's a 270 foot long section, viaduct section, with all the track in and the handrails. And basically what I need to do with this, my first step is to reduce this down to 200 feet, because that's going to be the length of our two buildings. And also we'll go back here, so this is looking end on, and you'll remember, let's make sure the grid setting is right. That doesn't look right to me. Grid spacing every 1 foot, thank you. That's better. I like to see feet. 10 feet for some reason seems to work for me. Easy to count. So remember, we've got the height of the, so there's the height of the rails. That's the top of the rails there. That's the insulator rail there. Those are the running rails. And so I'm going to just make a box, which is going to be just over 11 feet tall. Doesn't really matter. So over here, 11 foot, 1.282. Okay, so that gives us the exact height of the rolling stock, which I measured earlier in Gmax. Let's move it over, zoom right in and down onto the running rail, because the rolling stock was floating above. First of all, let's save this as, because this is going to be our new project. Don't want to save it in viaducts. I'm going to save it as, let's call it Herculaneum carriage sheds, and it's version 1.1. Version 1, copy 1, which was spelled right. Okay, and that already gives us some textures, in fact far too many. We can delete that one, and we can delete that one. From the 1893 engineer. And we've got multiple copies of Viaduct text. It doesn't really matter. I suppose I can delete those because they're not actually being used. I've still got 2 copies where I've copied stuff over, but it doesn't matter. It'll only export 1. And you can see my box there sticking up. That's the height of the rolling stock as it trundles along the viaduct. Let's take that up to there. You can see that. So imagine that's a bit of rolling stock trundling along, because I've saved this and I'll explain what I'm doing. And I'll open up motorcar number 40 again, close that, and you can see here that on ground zero, motorcar 40 is floating up above ground zero. There's ground zero there. XYZ 0, 0, 0. And that's because if we look in this view, let's go back a bit, because what it is ground zero here for all rolling stock is the top of the running rail, and the bogies, which come in separately to this and fit onto here, and those are the attachment points for the bogies. The wheels on the bogies, the tread of the tyre of the wheel, of each wheel, is the bottom of the tyre sits on that line. In fact, I can show you. Here we are. Here's one of the bogies. Let's have a look at that. It doesn't sit on that line. What am I talking about? Because I can't show you that. Because when you come to export it, what you need to do is make sure that the center of the wheels is centered on that XYZ 0, 0, 0. That's that. main dummy. So if you were to raise that, I'm not going to do much with this, but if you were to raise that, the actual position of the bogies when I model them is that. Okay, but when you export a bogie, you always export its center position as the center of the wheels, looking on its side view. You can see the higher position of the collecting shoe there for the raised rail, so we don't need to save that. No. Okay, so that now gives us our first position, and as the photograph is concerned, it's that the top of the box is the top there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take that box and hopefully I'll know which direction to 5 or 7. Let's put out, it's bound to be wrong. Oh, it's right. Oh, there you are. So if I make that 20 foot wide, this is purely for positioning, and we center it. The height we don't want to change because that's really crucial. Let's make it 30 foot. Okay, there we are. So the top of that box now here is the top of the rolling stock there. Okay, now I reckon we're talking about, I've got my little hand here, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 9, and then that would be 10. So that about a ninth of 11 foot 1.282. What's that? That's going to be 1 foot 25 inches, 9 into 25. We'll say 1 foot 3. Round it up, give it a bit more height. So what I'm going to do is, to get the position of that entranceway, I'm going to make a box, another box. I like making these boxes because they give us, they're useful for position making, setting positions. So here's another box, and I'm going to make it 1 foot 3, and I'm going to position it, center it again. And if I zoom in and bring it down, okay, now I think that that line, the upper part of that box there, is the same height. So if that's the rolling stock, you've got to imagine in your mind the rolling stock sitting up there. That's the space between the top of the rolling stock and the bottom, that line along there. And once I've got that line sorted, it's going to give me, I can then guess the curve. Although this photograph is taken at a slight angle, we're face on there, but we're angled as when we're looking across there. That should be okay. That should give us that. Okay, so that's how I'm going to start this project, and this is only the first video showing the construction of these, making of these little stations, of this carriage shed station. The other thing, of course, I need is textures, and well, black and white photographs. To me, that looks like it's metal. To me, that looks like it's corrugated. It's got quite a reflection from the sun. It's curved. The classic material. I can't believe the LOR had a lot of money to chuck about. The classic material would have been Nissen huts type construction. Quick fabricated structures. So I think that's probably corrugated iron there. It may be zinc sheeting, which would be quite flat. And I can't really see corrugations along it. But I'm going to err on the side of corrugated iron. And this, I think, is wooden boarding, because they used a lot of wood on their stations and paid the price, of course, in in the Second World War when stations got hit and burnt. But I think I can chance it with planks on top of the viaduct. The other thing to look at here, to note, is that we've got the width of the viaduct. You see those two legs there? Those are the width of the viaduct. That's the width of the viaduct stretching to there. So that looks okay. And then we've got these are closer together, and they look much more like one of the stations. I did say I would show you Pierhead station, which we'll do in a minute. But the sort of penultimate, these are the textures I've chosen, very drab, but then you've got a black and white photograph, and that tends to influence you on a lack of colour. I mean, there's some lovely colour photographs of the LOR showing it with all sort of bright yellows and that, and there's this, you know, deep red, carmine, red oxide colour of the viaduct, which you don't get from black and whites, of course. But I think I'm going to err for the sort of, you know, pleasant shades of grey, 50 shades of grey, let's say, and go for that, because that's going to be innocuous. And if in doubt, make it innocuous. Then people don't shout at you too much. So this is 270 foot long, so I'm going to reduce that down to 200 feet. That'll be the next job. And then I shall start trimming this down by removing the handrails basically all the way along, and then putting up a very straightforward structure on part of it, and then a slightly more complex structure on the other, a slightly wider structure on the other. Looking again at this, you see we've got a higher roof there. Well, I'm going to keep the same. That looks to be the same, it just looks like it's wider, much wider there. And of course I haven't got any image showing the other side. So what's happening? There doesn't appear to be any stairs leading up to that side, so it doesn't look as if there's the remains of an old station stairway been there. That seems to be completely isolated, and the fact that this is all a dock with timber piled up on it tends to suggest that it would only be for the train crews anyway, and I think they accessed it by just walking along the viaduct from Herculaneum New Station, the new station at Herculaneum. That's what Bob and I both think. So that's what I'm going to go for, and the windows I'm going to nick from, I'm going to borrow or reproduce or copy from Pierhead Station. So let's have a quick look at the do we want it saved? Yes we do. And if we have a look here, meshes, stations, and stations are quite a business. Have I got any? I thought I had the stations there. Maybe I've still got. I tend to move them about a bit. Station 3 Pierhead, here we are. So I should have put those into that folder. Shelter left, shelter right, stairs left, right, Pierhead Station. Now that looks to me like the Pierhead version 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that one, I'll give you an idea. Pierhead Station was fun to do. It was complex. I've simplified it considerably because of that, and even so it is still quite a beast to make. And as you can see, it's got all the attachment points in there for the passengers and everything else. And in fact I had to break this up into about 6 different meshes before I could persuade trains to load it together. But the point about Pierhead is it's got these nice windows all the way along. It's glazed throughout. It's not an overall roof, but it is canopied on each side, connected across by girders. I've left out some of the girder detail from under the canopy. It was just too much. But otherwise I think I've got virtually everything there at Pierhead that we need, and a sort of a nod and a wink to the little kiosks that were down below underneath the stairs. I really like these stairs. Getting it right. I think I made them and remade them about 4 times before I got the angles right, and even then I'm not 100%, but close enough. And you can see here that at pier head we've got these girder pieces, and that to me looks like these ones here. At least they're close enough for me to use them and nobody to say that's wrong, unless you were around at the time and can remember it, before it was absolutely destroyed by wanton vandalism in the 50s when they closed the whole thing down. I know that the track deck, this crazy half circular, semicircular, half tube decking was its final nemesis, but nevertheless, when you think of things like the Docklands Light Railway hanging there in the sky above you, the old LOR, the route, would still be very, very useful, I think. Anyway, we're modelling it in the 20s and 30s, so all things are happy then. It's going to keep going, and it'll keep going in our imagination. Okay, so that's rather a lengthy video waffling on, but it does give you an idea of how I'm going to start the project for making the carriage sheds. And if you are, so here we are, remember, back to the first stage, and of course having made the viaduct, I just keep using it again and again and again and again for all the different things I need to do. Stations, let's have a look at another station. I made a couple of sort of standard stations. There we are, station 2 version 1.2, which is the most recent, I think is that one. These are the ones that, this is the one that Bob is using on the route at the moment. It's similar to several of the stations, but of course it's got all the attachment points there, you can see. It's got these amazing stairs, but there's a lot of variations in the stations and I'm hoping to cover most of those. I did make this rather bizarre boffy at the end here, possibly a signal box. I'm not quite sure what it is, it's not clear in any of the captions, and I think we've got all the books now that talk about the Liverpool Overhead. Anyway, there we are. So that's the first part of my video on making the carriage sheds at Herculaneum Dock station on the Liverpool Overhead Railway. That's our starting point. I'll come back to that for section 2 of this, or part 2 of this video, and I hope it's of use for people who are making things in GMAX, who might consider that models like this are far too complex. They're not. You start off with very simple basic shapes and you gradually refine the details, add extra details, and develop your models accordingly. And of course some of them don't work, like that junction in trains. It worked the first time I put it in. I wonder why that was. So that's something to check out, which I will do. Right, okay, so hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a nice comment. If it's been of any use, please perhaps give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. If you have any queries about GMAX or the Liverpool Overhead Railway, I'll try and help, so do please post them, and look out for part 2.